All right, keep that applause going because the wonderful author herself is coming out to the stage. Welcome, Heidi Schauer.
Hi, Kev. So, wow, we put this together kind of short notice, and we weren't sure, how many people would come, and we decided that even if it was just Kevin, Leslie, and I, we'd be okay with having a party here today. So we're really glad that you guys could have done anything with your awesome Saturday, and you chose to be here. And that's not surprising, because Kevin is a great guy. Like Jesse said, my name is Heidi Schauer, and I am the woman that was blessed to have this opportunity to work with Kevin and Leslie. Thank you guys for picking me, because you could have picked anybody. And we did it. Kevin's a risk taker, right, Phil? He's the first one out there, and he's going, no, come on, let's try it. And we sort of just grabbed onto each other and said, let's do this. And we really didn't know exactly what we were going to do. So through a team of people. So it's not Heidi's book, it's not Kevin's book, it absolutely is Kevin's story. But this story came to life through this amazing team of people. And it was an effort to provide hope and emphasize on the importance of love and gratitude. Kevin's known for saying it takes a village, and this took a village. So what is this book? People want to know, what is this book you've been working on? Sorry, this is weird for me. And it's more than just an ALS story. And it's more than just some guy's life. It's this crazy, amazing thing. And when you know Kevin, Phil describes Kevin as this enigma. And he is. He's just this really unique, one-of-a-kind guy. And it is hard to describe who he is in less than 5 days. So when people ask me that, it's a hard thing to address. And when I first met Kevin, I began interviewing people to kind of find out who he is and what he's like, because I didn't actually know him before. I knew his name, and I knew he knew some of my family members, but I didn't know much about him when we began this project. So one person that was able to tell me a lot of great things about who Kevin is Diane Thill. And she worked with Kevin for many years. And Diane describes Kevin as a compassionate man who never gives up. He's always concerned about others and their health and well-being. And he's that guy who gets you thinking about attitudes and how things occur to you. And once you meet him, once you talk to him and give him a little bit of time, he leaves you inspired in some way. And he truly does make a difference in your life. I can agree with all of those things that Diane said about Kevin. Because I know my life is forever changed from working with him and getting to know him and Leslie and working on this book. So when I started this book project, I told my family, I told my husband and my kids and my mom, and then immediately after I would tell them that I was going to work on this book project, I'd say, but it's not about a book. And they'd go, oh, okay. So you're spending a lot of time on this, but it's not about a book. And then my mom would say, honey, I hope there's going to be a book. And, thankfully there was. But what I mean by that was it was just so much bigger than that. So the next question people usually want to know is, how did you come to work on this book project? And I think it's a really incredible thing. For me, it's a God thing. Because it was August 15th of 2013, and we were going to have this annual event that we had in honor of my dad. We were going to do a food and school supply drive. But that particular year, I actually had decided we weren't going to do it. And so it was 2 days before that I sort of just sent an email out to my family and said, I guess I am going to do it, because it was the only way I could actually celebrate my dad's birthday without him being here. So when Kevin and Leslie showed up that day and they had a donation, a food donation, it was a big surprise because I knew who they were and I didn't know they knew the event was happening. And here they came with this donation and they're telling me a little bit about their life. And at that time I was having really bad allergy problems and tummy troubles. And my Aunt Colleen said, go talk to Kevin. He just knows so much about so many things. Just go ask him if he has some suggestions. So I ran over and I started talking to him. And right away he stopped me and said, do you have something to write this down? Because I'm not going to repeat it. And that was my first lesson, right? because he wasn't doing it to be rude. He was doing it because he needed to conserve his energy. This was a big day of being out, and he wanted to talk to as many people as he could. So he wasn't going to just keep repeating himself as I went, wait, what? What did you say? What website am I supposed to look at? What book should I go check out? Who should I talk to? Okay, tell me one more time. He couldn't do that. So he was just real brave in being up front and saying, okay, I'm sure I'll give you a couple ideas, but please write them down. And so at that time, I was a full-time mom. I was a stay-at-home mother. I had a son, Tristan, who was 3 years old, and a daughter, Destiny, who was 6. And I was just this woman who loved to write and take pictures. And I loved helping people when I could. So because it was a smaller group that year, I had this great opportunity to sit with Kevin and Leslie and actually get to talk to them a little bit. And we talked about everything. We talked about movies and books and life and a little bit about ALS, which I had no idea what it was. I actually went home that night and Googled it. But in that conversation of me kind of being in awe, because I didn't know what probiotics were, I didn't know why I would ever want to eat kefir, I didn't know why I needed to be eating organic. I'm a cake girl. We had these conversations, and somewhere in there, I was just sort of in awe at how much he knew. And he said, oh yeah, my friends tell me I should write a book. Okay, and I was like, oh, well, would you ever do that? And he said, I've written some poems, but I don't know about a book. And I'm that girl, and I'm going, a book? I've always wanted to write a book. And he knows stuff. And people say he should write a book. And my wheels were turning, and I'm thinking, let's do it. We can do this. You have this dream of doing a book. Why couldn't we? And so I sort of just casually threw it out there and said, well, if you ever decided you wanted to do that, I could help you with that. I do some writing. And we left it at that. And I went home. And then I got home, and I do what I do. I just kept thinking and kept going, okay, we could write this book, and what would it be about? And who is this guy again? And what does he know? And then I sent a note to him and Leslie and just said, I was serious about that. If you ever wanted to make that dream come true, we could talk about it. And it took Kevin a couple days, and then he called me and he said, let's do it, girl. Let's co-create a book. And I called him back, and the very next day, on August 21st, that was my first meeting with Kevin and Leslie, and I went over to their house, and Leslie opened the door. It was a sunny day, and she just had this bright, big, welcoming smile. And I think anyone who's gone to Kevin and Leslie's house knows that's exactly what it is. It's an open door and this amazing smile and a place at their table anytime you want it. And so that's kind of where we started. And some people go, right, lady who lived in Wyoming, Minnesota, and was a stay-at-home mom and just sort of kind of liked to write, what would make you think that you could write a book? And I can tell you exactly what would make me think that. In addition to having this incredible family and these amazing friends who always believe in me and really do tell me you can do anything you want to do. And you always believe that, right? Your friends and your family, but you kind of think like, well, right, they have to tell me that because they're sort of obligated. They're my friends and family and they love me. But in 3rd grade in 1988, 26 years ago, Miss Rosella Damboe was my 3rd grade teacher. And I very specifically remember her leaning down by my desk and saying, someday, when you publish a book, I want to get a copy of it. And she may not have thought that was a very big deal, but for me it was, because she was someone who didn't have to say that, and she was, for some reason, propelled to tell me that. And it gave me one sentence to hold on to and fall back on when I thought that I couldn't write a book or even a story, or I would always say for the longest time, oh no, I'm not a writer. I just kind of like to write sometimes. Because in my mind, I thought you had to be perfect at that. If you say you're a writer, you better know a lot of stuff. But then in more recent years, I was in a writing class, and Holly Hardin summed it up for me real easy. You are a writer when you write. You are not a writer when you're perfect. And so it brought me back to that comment in 3rd grade of wanting a book when I published my first book. And then it happened that on a day that an event was supposed to be canceled, someone that I didn't think was even coming showed up, and he mentioned that he wanted to write a book. To me, that's a God thing. So we began on August 21st, 2013, and our very first day, we spent 4 days together, and we accomplished 12 pages. Kevin talked, and I typed. And I was pretty sure at that moment that we were going to be done by Christmas. Because my calculations, I was pretty sure we could write it, we could edit it, we could put recipes, pictures, and probably have videos for it by Christmas. So I called Kelly Parody in Arizona, and I told her that. And I said, well, actually, we probably could get this done by Thanksgiving if we really work hard, if we want it bad enough. And Kelly just said, uh-huh. You let me know when you're ready. So we started working, and we didn't have really a plan of action. We just were taking it day by day. Sometimes I'd have my kids with me, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd be there for an hour, sometimes I'd be there for 12 hours, and they were wondering if I was actually gonna leave. And we just did what we could. And so it was just all new to us. And when Thanksgiving came and left, and Christmas came and left, I started to get a little bit worried that this was going to be a much bigger commitment, but I could see how amazing it was going to be. The problem was I hadn't actually talked to my husband about doing this or thought about my other responsibilities that I had. Kevin and I didn't really let Leslie and Drew weigh in on it. We just jumped, and then they were supportive and loving, and they said, okay, sure, we can do this. So it all started to change and kind of turn at that point. But I had some pretty good ideas of what it was going to be and what it was going to look like, and I knew there would be a book at some point. I think Kevin would say he had some pretty good ideas of what it was going to be and what it was going to look like, and there would be a book at that some point. And I would say that we were both wrong because neither one of us knew what the other one was thinking, and we had two creative people who are used to doing their own thing and being in charge of it. And we weren't communicating at that point. We were going full force. I had pages and files, and he was talking, and I was typing, and I had ideas, and he had ideas. But it was just, it was this moment. And Leslie offered that this is a work of art. And art takes time and comes to be what it's meant to be when it's ready. And I held on to that too. Because there were sometimes I wanted it to be done, and sometimes I needed it to be done. And some days I never wanted it to end because I fell in love with these people. So that's kind of how life goes. And we can have a plan, we can create expectations, we can play this story in our mind and put forth our greatest efforts to have things go the way we want them to go, the way we dream about them going. But it doesn't always work out that way, and things don't always go the way that we plan. We can have a plan and an idea of how we think things in our life should go. We can be positive and dream big and hope for the very best. But still, life at times has a way of happening that is not what we planned, not what we predicted or hoped for. When I first began working with Kevin, I didn't even know what ALS was. I was curious, what is this guy battling? What will happen to him? ALS is unique, and every case is different. And that's a lot like this book. It's unique and different. This book is not simply an ALS journey. It's not just about Lyme disease. This book is about life and relationships, the challenges of staying together in love while you're losing pieces of yourself, not taking things for granted, learning to let go, knowing when to hold on. This book is about casting a stone into one of life's ponds and creating ripples. So this is what I know. I know that this book project was never about a book. It's impacted not only me, but my husband and my children. My kids, who are going to be 9 and 6, are learning about ALS, compassion, putting themselves in others' shoes. My husband is loving and supporting. Leslie, loving and supporting, being there for someone else, not only when it's easy, but when it's a bit more difficult. My children have learned about love and friendship, compassion, value of time, and someone being fully present. They've seen Kevin change over the past 2 years, and they've seen me change. They've seen me smile and laugh at parts of this project, and they've seen me cry. Those moments when Kevin is struggling and having a more difficult time being able to breathe, when he's planning end-of-life details, when he thinks he could die before I see him again. By December 2014, I had become so filled with fear and worry that I would not get this project done in time. I'd been working on the project for over a year, and I wasn't sure I would have Kevin get to see it complete. I wanted him to see his story and pick out pictures and hold it and share it with his kids. Knowing that he had 2 boys was a big motivator for me. That was a real driving force because I would have done anything to have my dad's stories in his own words. I couldn't work fast enough, and just as Kevin's life and days were changing, so were mine. And I thought I would have to quit the writing project. I considered having another writer come on. I considered talking to his sister. I considered that maybe it just needed to be shelved. At some point, I literally dropped down to my knees in my dining room and I prayed. I prayed that God would help me figure out the words that were meant to be put on these pages. And I prayed that Kevin would get to hold this book and see how it impacts people. I prayed harder than I have ever prayed in my whole entire life. I had hundreds of yellow pages laid out before me. I had way too many computer files. My children were growing up and getting busy, and sometimes they would grab some of those 500 pages and decide to draw me a picture. And my husband needed my help. He needed me to be committed to what I said I was going to be committed to, and to be responsible for what I was responsible for. Now, I don't know about you, but my experience has been that prayers get answered in the most unexpected ways. For example, with a painting. So Kevin dreamed of having Jessie DeCourcy, that beautiful woman who did the introduction, he dreamed of having her paint his glimpse of heaven. And those of you who know Kevin know what I'm referring to, and if you've read the book, it's in there. So he would ask me often after we started this project, who's that painter in your family? And every time he asked me, I would go, yep, Jessie. And he'd go, oh, it'd be so amazing if she would paint a part of my story. And I would go, yep. And I didn't want another creative person on this project. I feared that the project would become about a painting, and it wouldn't be a book project anymore. I worried that all my hard work would get set aside. It was very silly and very selfish. And by January of 2015, I thought about it so often that I actually came to a point I knew I couldn't live with myself. If I knew Kevin had this dream, and I couldn't even get over myself enough to tell this woman that he dreams of her painting a portion of his life story. Knowing that I couldn't live with myself, if something were to happen to Kevin and I didn't even tell her that, I sent Jessie a text and asked her if I could come over. It was the longest 8-mile drive of my life, and I wanted to puke on my shoes when I pulled in her driveway. Right? It takes something to know when you have been foolish and to actually admit it. But I went to her house, and I was there for hours. And I told her about Kevin wanting her to paint this and how he had asked me over and over, and I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't put in the request. I wouldn't put it on her radar because I was afraid and I was jealous and I was worried. And we laughed and we cried, and she told me she understood those fears and those worries. And we realized we had so much in common, and we didn't actually know each other. Like, we knew each other's names, and we knew where each other lived. We knew who each other's husbands were and how many kids we each had. And we went to the same Christmas parties. But we didn't actually know anything about one another. And then, after I said all of that, I had this really unreasonable request for her. I requested that she consider painting Kevin's glimpse of heaven. And then I told her I have absolutely no money to pay you. And then I told her that I would like this oil painting. And if you know anything about oil paintings, they take a long time to dry. I'd like it within 2 months so we could give it to him for his birthday. And like every single friend I have asked to be a part of this project and have made unreasonable requests of, Jessie said yes. And that day we had, because of honesty and confession, this breakdown and this beautiful buildup. And that was the start of our sister-cousin friendship. When I had nothing to give, she gave me everything she could to help make a dream come true, to help tell an important tale that I believe is worth sharing. Kelly Parody did the same thing from Arizona. Andrea McCardle did the same thing. Drew Schauer, Trevor DeCourcy, Pat McCardle, every single time I had an unreasonable request, and it wasn't on a Tuesday afternoon, it was the night before Thanksgiving, New Year's Day, the one weekend they had off. I know you got things to do, but can you please help me? And every time they said yes. They all gave what they could when I had nothing to give in return because they believed Kevin's story was worth it. And that's just one small sample, Kevin, of the ripples that you create. That's just one small sample of how this book project has changed my life and reminded me that the lives we live are important and they matter. And the things we do and say make a difference. Each of us has our own path and our own purpose. And God has a much greater plan and is capable of something more amazing and more beautiful than I could ever do on my own. That is what I have learned from Kevin Polari and Leslie Hitchcock. This is the book project that was never about a book. Kevin, I am so thankful for that moment when you were told your work isn't done yet, because you have done some incredible work in my life. You have taught me to trust. You've taught me to be a part of a team. You've taught me the importance of having your voice heard, the joy of loving yourself and believing in the gifts you have to give. You have reminded me, once again, we never walk alone. And you have anchored my faith and brought forth the value of sincere, unconditional love and gratitude. I cannot thank you and Leslie enough for taking a chance on me, a woman in Wyoming, Minnesota, a stay-at-home mom who just likes to write and tell stories. And I know I'm going to forget somewhere in here, but I just have a couple quick thank yous. Kelly Parody for being here today from Arizona to celebrate who Kevin is. Andrea McCardle for helping with design and layout. Jesse DeCourcy for changing the whole scope of this project and doing the cover. Drew Schauer and Leslie Hitchcock for being so supportive and loving. Trevor DeCourcy for helping with all the extras. Rosella Damboy for believing me when I was a child. Holly Harden for reminding me you're not a writer when you're perfect. You're a writer when you write. Kelly Cunningham and Lois Polari for believing in creating amazing children. Destiny and Tristan Schauer for sacrificing time and loving Kevin and Leslie as much as I do. The reading group for just offering their suggestions and giving us things to think about and helping us rearrange a little bit. Chris Allen, Serena, Wendy, Dylan, all the people at Willowbrook who were excited and wanted to support having this special event today. Betsy Schauer for the late nights writing sessions and always being there with me. Our closest friends, family, and all of you here today. Thank you, Eaglebrook. Thank you for everyone who's shared one sentence, one gesture, one word that made a difference in our lives. When you guys think that those little moments of kindness or those little moments of bravery of just being honest don't matter, let me tell you, they matter more than anything. Kevin, your voice has been heard, and it is changing lives. A Seeker's Harvest is available for purchase today in the lobby if you don't have one, but mostly we just invite you to join us for some snacks and book signing, and we want to just end today with a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing all of us here today, some of us from just down the road, some of us across the state, some of us across the country, because of a man named Kevin Polari and his courageous desire to just do what he can to help someone else, his passion for bringing an end in some way to ALS or making the journey a little more bearable. Thank you for Leslie and Drew and everyone, every person who's here today and every person who loves us. And thank you, God, most of all, for keeping us in the palm of your hand and reminding us that each of us has a special gift that we share here on earth and that we have a path we are meant to take up. But thank you for this special day and for these amazing hearts. Amen. And I don't want to forget, we also want to thank our dads, Richard Polari and James Cunningham, who loved big and had a zest for life. They'll join you in the lobby.